Today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you guys about one reason I am so damn confident that XRP is going to do tremendous things. In fact, you guys will know if you've followed me for long enough that I ultimately think XRP and other DLTs out there like XLM are going to be the rails upon which a new global digital financial system are built upon. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. And we're going to be doing a bit of a weird angle, or approaching this with a bit of a weird angle, and looking at kind of globalization and how right now there is a missing component in the form of a globalized value or monetary system. And that very much is what these protocols are going to usher in, and a problem that they're going to solve. And hence, that's why I think they're ultimately going to succeed. Because I think, and when I say the word globalism, it has negative connotations to it, but there's pros and cons with everything in life. If you think about globalization of travel, you know, we're all very happy of the invention of airplanes and how that's allowed us to travel globally or send messages around the world. Money still hasn't quite caught up with the current technological age that we're in. And actually a protocol like XLM, XRP, which is what we're specifically going to focus on in this video, really are going to bring us into that kind of internet age for value, assets and money. And that's ultimately why I think it's going to succeed, because it is a kind of global world that we're moving towards. There's a missing part to globalism, and that is money. And that's a problem that XRP is solving. And we've got probably the best person to talk to us on this subject matter being Chris Larsen, one of the initial founders with Arthur Brito and Jeb McCaleb of Ripple, XRP. It was Jeb that actually released the code to release the 100 billion XRP tokens. Chris was obviously a visionary. He's one of the smartest people I've ever listened to, and probably has one of the best understandings of this overall space. Now, I'm not here defending globalism. I'm not here saying it's a good thing. I'm not here saying it's a bad thing. What I am here to say is that it's a clear agenda, and actually XRP is going to fulfill that and enable this kind of one world system that we're moving towards, which isn't a one world currency. It's a system where all value can interchange. And we looked at kind of Peter Thiel and XRP's vision for tomorrow's monetary system. But this is really all about kind of the completion of globalism through XRP. It's one reason I'm so damn confident it's going to succeed. What I want to do is dive over to Chris Larsen. We've got a couple of clips of him talking about this, and it really sort of gives me that confidence that XRP is going to do what I believe it's going to. And of course, this is a video that's nearly 9 years old, in 2017. So let's go ahead and play the kind of opener of Chris Larsen talking about this technology's impact on a global world and why it's such a big deal.
And I think that's particularly important in the world that we're going into. So I think it's actually a bright future. That's why we show this. But you know, the Internet of Value, I think, is more than just laying out kind of a new way of doing finance. I think fundamentally, this represents the final step in globalization. And you know, we're at a very interesting time right now with globalization. The world has never been more interconnected, more dependent on each other. We have got to work together as one world. It's also never been sort of more divided, and there's never been more disillusionment around what globalization means. And I think that's fair. People should be disillusioned with globalization, but not because it's a bad idea. It's more, it's a work in progress. It's incomplete. There is something missing with globalization. And we like to use the analogy of fire. You know, you cannot have fire without fuel, oxygen, and heat. And I think the same thing applies with globalization. Globalization does not work unless you have interoperability between three things: data, goods, and money. And the truth is, we only have interoperability in two of those things. Goods and data are fully interoperable around the world. Money is not. So in some ways, we sort of have a fire without fuel. It's sort of this smoldering thing. We know there's potential there, but it really isn't delivering on all the promise. And probably, I think, safe to argue, it's actually making things quite a bit worse. An incomplete globalized system, kind of, you know, if you're in a developing market, maybe if you're in a, you know, kind of underserved market, you see all the data through your social media feeds. You have access to all this information and what other people are doing in their lives. But because the money part is not interoperable, you can't act on it. There's tons of parts of our planet where you can see, but you can't act. And that's a big problem.
We are moving towards an ever-increasing globalistic world. Again, there's good things that have been brought forth as a result of that. There's also bad things. This is going to do many things, certainly as it relates to money, like bring literally billions of people into the sort of modern world. It's going to essentially enable a more interconnected and globalist world. And I think that's the agenda. And I think that's one reason that XRP is going to do so well, is because it really fulfills that agenda. It's enabling the financial systems, the value system of the world to be modernized and brought onto a kind of internet age, if you will, for value. And this is why we're such a big fan of this. And people say, oh, well, it's taken, it's not really done much since 2017. But look at Amazon and what it did post the dot-com boom. It took around about the same amount of time and then went on to become one of the largest companies in the world and fundamentally changed the entire e-commerce game and sort of commerce and retailing with a new technology. I think XRP is on a very similar trajectory. Let's continue with what Chris has to say here.
So, we look kind of like, how did we get here? Look at all these components of globalization coming back. This is a pretty recent thing. If you look at goods, for example, if you look at shipping, and we're just going back to the 50s, before the shipping container, so called pre-container. The 50s weren't that long ago, from my perspective. I know it seems like prehistoric times for you guys, but things have moved very rapidly. If you look at shipping before the shipping container, shipping was an incredibly inefficient activity. It was extremely labor intensive. Goods would show up in a port. They'd have to be unpacked. They had to be repacked. This was an incredible sort of friction point or burden on global trade. And then along comes a very, very simple innovation, a very simple technology, nothing super complicated, very, very basic, low level, called the shipping container in about the 50s. And that fundamentally changed the way goods and shipping worked. In the next 20 years, you had about a 700% increase in global trade. And why is that? It's because now goods were completely interoperable around the world. You could go from ship to train to truck without having to touch anything. Every port in the world was interoperable. You didn't need bilateral agreements to ship goods. Shipping companies were interoperable. So again, it fundamentally changed the way goods worked. Goods are now globalized. We all know what happened with data. Before the World Wide Web, it was incredibly expensive to communicate or send data cross-network. So that was a huge point of friction on how the world communicated. Obviously, with the World Wide Web now, 3 billion people can communicate without being on the same network. That's really the key point there. We have a network of networks when it comes to data and communications, fundamentally changed the way communications work. But that's not the case with money. Money is sort of that missing ingredient. With money today, the world spends about $2 trillion a year just to move value between networks or cross-border. And even spending that much money, we have missing access is blocked to billions of people. And you have incredible fail rates. So single-digit failure rates on cross-border value transfer, single digit. In tech world, you talk about 5 non-reliabilities, that's expected. When it comes to cross-border transfers of value, you're talking 1/9. So that is incredibly expensive for the world. This is a huge burden. And again, that's why globalization is probably not working for most people.
So I'll leave that there. I'll leave a link to the full video in the description. Chris Larson's somebody you should go and listen to, certainly his older videos. He's not been right on everything, but I think generally his understanding of this space from back in 2011 and understanding the capabilities that this technology can have in regards to enabling this new world. And we're at that kind of inflection point, I think, in regards to where we are today. His foresight into all that is remarkable. This is ultimately why I think XRP and some of these other cryptos are going to be successful, is because they fundamentally solve a problem in the real world, certainly the world of finance, which is dealing with money directly and value directly. And they also bring us into, in solving that problem, bring us into a kind of internet age for money and value, but also bring us towards more of a globalized world, which I think is a very clear agenda. And then even further towards the end there, Chris Larson talks about IoT, which is a topic we can tackle entirely in other videos. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to love and leave you. I hope you enjoyed this one. This is just one reason I'm so confident that XRP is going to do spectacular things. I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. See you soon.